Hello and welcome to the Global Agriculture Innovation Forum. We're very happy you have joined us for this, our 13th session of the year, and the first in our theme focusing on innovations in information and communication technology. I'm Gerald Shively, Associate Dean and Director of International Programs in the College of Agriculture at Purdue University. On behalf of the organizing committee, our advisory group, and everyone contributing to this effort, I'd like to welcome you. I'd also like to thank USDA, especially the Foreign Agricultural Service, for its ongoing support of these forum events. The goal of our year-long series of events is to explore the frontier of agricultural innovation with a view to feeding the world sustainably. One of the most important and exciting areas of innovation unfolding today is in how we communicate and how we deliver reliable information in a timely manner to those who need it most. Today's panelists will be discussing this topic and sharing their insights into innovations related to delivery of agricultural extension and advisory services. To lead this discussion, we're extremely fortunate to have with us Josh Woodard, Senior Digital Advisor with USAID's Bureau for Resilience and Food Security. Josh will serve as today's moderator. Without further delay, I'll hand it over to Josh to introduce today's outstanding set of speakers. Please enjoy the program, and please stay for the live question and answer session that will follow the presentations.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction, Gerald. So I'm very pleased to be here. 13 is actually my lucky number. I know it's unlucky for many people around the world, but pleased to be here for the 13th session. And I know for those who are familiar with agricultural extension, you'll know that it is an area that is often woefully under-resourced with way too many farmers per extension agent in much of the world. And digital technologies have been a tool that have been used increasingly around the globe to try to bridge some of that gap. We actually, USAID together with the Gates Foundation recently funded a study that was conducted by Cornell University that was analyzing evidence of the impact of digital technologies in agriculture, looking at the past 20 years. And extension and advisory services actually comprised about 3/4 of those studies. So it's an area when we look at the use of digital technology within the ag sector, extension and advisory services has been relatively well studied compared to other sectors, but there's still a lot to learn. There's a lot that of experimentation that still needs to be done. And I think today we have some really interesting speakers who are going to speak to different elements of that. So you'll hear from Digital Green's perspective in terms of their work creating a protocol for data exchange to ensure that agricultural data, farmers' data, is being used efficiently and effectively across providers, across different stakeholders, but also that farmers have control and an agency over that data. We'll then hear from the Hingawesi team in Rwanda, which has been working with the government of Rwanda to help them to digitize their extension services. After that, we'll hear from AGRA and their experience with partnering with private sector service providers to help to digitize last mile service providers, their village-based advisors in communities. And then finally, we'll hear from One Acre Fund and their efforts to digitize their own operations and their own extension services that they provide to the farmers that they work with. So the first person that will be speaking today, which I'm very pleased to introduce you to, is Alicia Miller. She's the Vice President of Strategy and Partnership at Digital Green. And she, in Now, capacity supports new partnerships, strategic planning, and program development, and key cross-sectoral priorities for gender and learning. Prior to that, she worked at the Gates Foundation, and most recently was a managing director of the Global Food and Agriculture Program at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. So without further ado, Alicia, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Miller. I'm VP of Strategy and Partnerships at Digital Green, and I'm going to be talking today about leveraging the power of data exchange for extension. So Digital Green is a nonprofit that has developed an approach in extension called community-based video. In this extension approach, farmers are recorded sharing best practices, and then those short videos are screened using small Pico projectors within existing community groups. A trained facilitator then explains the content and facilitates a discussion further, and they're also available to take feedback from farmers about what they might want to learn more about. Those same facilitators are able to track adoption and better understand what's driving and motivating farmers. So this farmer-to-farmer extension approach has reached over 2.3 million farmers, 73% of which are women. And this is always done in partnership. And so we've worked in collaboration with 46,000 extension workers. The majority of our work has been in India and Ethiopia, but we've worked in more than 15 other countries elsewhere. So controlled evaluations of our work have demonstrated that it's very effective. So we've seen results like increased uptake of practices by 50%, increase in yields of up to 46%, increases in incomes of up to 17%. And we've seen that our approach is far more cost effective than traditional approaches. So up to 8 times more cost effective in the case of India's pre-existing model. So while we're very proud of this work and it remains at the center of what we do, we know that the world is changing around farmers, and we are changing as well to meet their needs. So what is changing? So one, rural access to digital technology is very different now than when we began. There is a rapid increase in access to not only mobile phones, but smartphones and access to the internet. Not true everywhere around the world, but certainly in many geographies, this is the case. And in India, it's been particularly rapid in the last 1.5 to 2 years. Along with that, especially in India again, there has been a significant increase in the number of service providers in the agricultural sector, which means many of these are trying to deliver information to farmers. They're offering advisories of some type and other services as well. Climate change is obviously changing the game for farmers in many ways, but as it relates to extension, it really is requiring us to get even more localized and customized in our data so that we can provide advisories that are very precise for farmers. So this is requiring us to get more precise, but also faster because the situation is changing for farmers. And then finally, COVID-19 has restricted in-person contact, which has driven farmers further to remote and virtual sources of information. We recognize that in many places, in-persons come back, but it is certainly changing into a combination of services and means of accessing information. And for Digital Green, we've also seen that there's just a proliferation of data that's been happening as well. So not only do we have more data ourselves after working with farmers for many years, but all of our peers have additional data. There are new public data sets. Private sector has incredibly rich data. And when you bring these data sets together, there's potential to find real insights. But there's also hesitation in bringing that data together because data is valuable and it often is driving businesses or driving a competitive advantage. And so while there are solutions and insights to be found, it can be difficult to bring people together. So we have data across our system of work, but we know that all of our peers do as well, as do all actors in the food system. So that brought us to FarmStack. We want to see the data that's being collected be of value to the farmer, build their agency, empower them to use it in ways that benefit them. And we also want to see more sharing and exchange of data across the ecosystem because we think it leads to greater problem solving. So FarmStack is an open source protocol that is going to power the secure transfer of data. What does that mean? Why do we need that? The problem is at the system level, we have increasing fragmentation. So I mentioned this proliferation of service providers. This can cause a lot of noise, but it also means that we may not have interoperability and it might make it quite difficult or duplicative in the system. At the organizational level, as I mentioned, there's hesitation to share data because there's a lack of trust or fear that if an organization shares their data, it may not, their requirements for that data sharing may not be complied with. And so the only recourse they maybe have is a legal contract, which if it's violated, the data is already out there. And so legal recourse may not really fix the problem. And at the farmer level, farmers often lack control over their own data, despite the fact that it's data being generated about their practices, about their land, about their sales. And so we need to find ways to address this problem as well. So FarmStack is a protocol, not a platform, that is designed to do this. It's open source and community governed. We can get into that more later as people are interested. We've developed common usage policies, sort of templatize these common usage policies, which might be you can download it or you can only view it, it will expire, it can't be shared with others, that kind of thing. And then we've developed a peer-to-peer data connector that will connect directly the data owner with the data consumer with no intermediary. So FarmStack is not an intermediary. The peer-to-peer connector allows for a direct connection. Digital Green is nowhere in that mix directly. And then at the farmer level, we are working on the development of a data wallet that would actually allow the farmer to see the data they have, who it's being shared with, and make choices about whether they want to share it with additional stakeholders, restrict access to existing stakeholders. And at the same time, they'd be able to discover additional services that they might want to connect with. So how does this work? Well, on the left, we have data providers. These are data owners or data holders. They would download a peer-to-peer connector, which would be available on the FarmStack website. And I can explain a little more about that later. And then the data consumer would do the same, so they could have a secure connection. And the data provider would set the terms of how they are willing to share that data through a series of templatized options. And then that data would then be securely delivered through a container, secure container, from the provider to the consumer. And it could only be used for the purpose that had been designated, couldn't be accessed outside. So by using code, it actually is securing that, not through simple agreement. Here's an example of how this pertains to extension. In Andhra Pradesh, Digital Green wanted to provide advisories for cashew flower drop. This affects productivity of the cashew tree. And to do this, we needed good information on weather, we needed good soil data, and then of course we needed the location of farmers, especially that were growing cashew. So we, in this case, were the data consumer. We were able to get a data set from Climacell on weather, one from CIMMYT on soil data, and then of course we had the farmer database. We brought these together and we were able to deliver precise advisories that were at the right time and gave the right advice so that farmers could take action, because it's a very narrow window. And we delivered this not only through community-based video, but we also reinforced it with IVR and also video delivered via WhatsApp groups. And we saw a 21% increase in adoption rate. So we think this is driven not only by the channel, but also by the fact we were able to get far more precise in the delivery of that information. So a few takeaways. Advisories really must get more customized and multi-channel to meet farmer needs. But to do that, we need to have better exchange of data within the system across disparate actors. There needs to be not only a mechanism, but a means for people to trust that the sharing of that data is going to be secure. FarmStack is a public good that's designed to meet this need. And of course, I gave you the example with an extension because we're here to talk about advisory services, but this is a protocol that is useful for a whole range of solutions across the food system. And I thought I would just quickly show you the website. If you're interested, go to farmstack.co. This is what the website looks like. You can watch this demo to see a little bit more how it works. And you can also click on the GitHub, which is at the bottom of the page, if you want to take a look at the actual protocol itself. And that is it for my presentation. Thank you so much. I look forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Alicia. So we're going to move on to our next presenter in a moment, but I want to just quickly encourage everyone, if you have any questions for Alicia or for subsequent speakers, please make sure to use the Q&A function in the menu bar at the bottom to enter any questions you might have for our speakers. We'll be getting to a Q&A after everyone finishes presenting. So next up, I'm pleased to introduce Lawrence Mukamana and Etienne Nigaba. They're with the Feed the Future Rwanda Hingawesi activity. Laurence is the Deputy Chief of Party with that project. She's, for more than 15 years, has occupied leadership positions and been responsible for managing projects in the ag sector and associated domains, including work for the World Bank, Swiss Development Corporation, USAID, Rwanda's Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, and the FAO. And Etienne is the Agricultural Extension Advisor for the Hingawesi activity. He's an agronomist and certified junior project manager with experience in ag extension and technology transfer to farmers in both private and digital ag extension. He founded the Youth Engagement in Agriculture Network, which is a leading youth-led social enterprise for agricultural extension, serving more than 30,000 farmers with private extension and advisory services in Rwanda. So they will be speaking to us today about their experiences introducing digital technology into the extension system within Rwanda. With that, I will turn it over to Laurence, who will kick off their presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure for Hingawesi team to join this session and share with all of you what we are doing regarding the digitalization of agriculture extension services. I think it's a subject in which we should all be interested in, as it can significantly contribute to the agriculture transformation. I'm Laurence Mukamana, the Deputy Chief of Party of Hingawesi activity. I'm agronomist and a manager by education and profession. I will be delivering this presentation together with my colleague Etienne Nigaba, who is an agronomist and a focal point for digital extension initiatives. We are based in Kigali, Rwanda, in Africa. Agriculture is the main economic activity to millions of smallholder farmers of Rwanda. Agriculture productivity depends on a number of practices that must be applied in crop or animal production to ensure good productivity. Agriculture extension, also known as agriculture advisory services, plays a crucial role in boosting agriculture productivity, increase food safety and security, hence improving livelihoods of people. Traditional methods of delivering extension services, like physical meetings, have been used, but nowadays there are ongoing initiatives for digitalizing the system. The digital extension services provision involves the transfer of farming technologies and information to farmers using digital tools. This is of high priority in Rwanda, according to the 4th Strategic Plan for Agriculture Transformation, 2018-2024. Feed the Future Rwanda Hingawesi is a 5-year USAID-funded activity. It aims at increasing smallholder farmers' income, improve nutritional status of women and children, but also increase the resilience of agriculture and food systems to the changing climate. It's through the agriculture component that Hingawesi is contributing to the efforts of digitalizing agriculture extension system in Rwanda in collaboration with the government of Rwanda, other projects, the Frontline Extension Agent, and the communities. So this was a brief introduction of the presentation. I'm now calling upon my colleague Etienne, who is going to present the next slide. He will be talking about how collaboration has yielded positive results so far. Thank you again for joining us. Over to you, Etienne.
Thank you very much, Laurence, for a good introduction. I'm going to go through the collaborative activities we had to strengthen this digital agriculture extension we collaborated with a number of organizations, including the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, the Rwanda Agriculture and Animal Resources Board, the Developing Local Extension Capacity Project, and also the CABI organization. So with the developing local extension capacities, we strengthened the digital capacities and we integrated youth into public and private extension in Rwanda. It was a project started in June 2020 to May 2021, and we conducted a number of activities, including the survey, which was about the assessing the capacity of extension agents into digital extension. We also had an activity of customizing the new extension learning kits, which is a kit developed by the Global Forum for Rural Advisory Services. It is meant for training agriculture extension agents. So we had also another activity of digital extension training, which is basically developing extension materials and deliver training through digital means. With the CABI, we developed extension training app, which consists of a web administration application, along with the digital content for maize cultivation technologies. So in the building the capacity and assessing the needs of extension agents, we had a number of activities, including including developing the capacity of extension agents on the use of delivery of digital tools and using the digital materials. So we conducted a survey to over 50 extension agents to measure their baseline capacity and their readiness to change into modern agriculture extension and also digitalization. We examined their technical and functional skills, information and communications technology, and also the use and also the attitude toward using digital technology. So it was noted that there are differences in demographics, trainings, and also the digital assets used across the sector and across the extension agents. There are certain characteristics associated with being more open to change, to modernization, and also to digitalize extension activities. We also conducted the NELC customization, which is the new extension learning kits customization into the Rwandan context. We had basically a literature review and key informant interview to select the most relevant module according to what extension agents need in Rwanda. We had also master trainers from Rwanda Agriculture Board, the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, and also from Hingaweze, and also from other partners. So we had, we also conducted a national extension stakeholder meeting, which validated the survey finding, the survey I was talking about, and also gave feedbacks on priority areas to be considered according to the survey findings. We also included some activities needed for Rwanda's extension workers to be well equipped with the knowledge for improving their role. We customized those modules and they were transferred to the MINAGRI, which is the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, for sustainable use and availability for many people. So the customized module includes marketing and value chains, climate smart agriculture, nutrition sensitive extension, the digital extension, the agriculture entrepreneurship, and also the community mobilization. Those modules were temporarily hosted on CNFA website, but they were transferred to the Ministry of Agriculture and Human Resources website to be available to anyone and to be for the sustainable use. With the digital extension trainings, in partnership with the CABI, which developed the digital extension training module with practice exercises that can be delivered virtually and also completed at any page. We actually trained 12 youth in extension video production, and also that training was extended to 21 other extension workers in extension video dissemination. To date, we have produced 6 extension videos on improved maize practices, with the plan also to produce many others. In collaboration with the CABI, we developed the extension training app, which is actually a web application that allows training content to be uploaded to the platform, and also consisting of a dashboard that allows users, which are the admins, to manage, download, and also analyze the data sent by extension agents throughout the trainings. So we initially tested that application on 15 trainers, and also the training was also extended to 100 other proximity extension agents who were equipped with Android tablets. Up to date, 4,000 farmers were trained using these digital means on maize cultivation technique, using also, this CABI extension application. This is an ongoing assignment activity, which aim to reach about 5,000 farmers. So I hand over to Laurence for more on the conclusion about our activities.
Thank you very much, Etienne. We are about to finalize this presentation. So to conclude, I can say that we are very happy with progress made today. So far, results are promising, but more efforts are needed so far so that the digitalization of agriculture extension is well established and strong. Hingaweze and partners will keep improving, scaling up, and creating awareness on the digital tools so that they can be widely used. So this is the end of our presentation. On behalf of Feed the Future Rwanda Hingaweze team, I thank you very much again for being here today. We very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Laurence and Etienne. That was a great presentation. So before we move on, I want to first thank you to Derek for being the first person to ask a question. I see another couple of questions have come in, so please do continue to use the Q&A function to ask questions to the speakers. We'll be using those at the Q&A session at the end. So next up, I'm pleased to introduce everyone to Koresh Nordin. He's a program officer in extension and capacity building with the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, also known as AGRA. Koresh has a wealth of hands-on experience working with rural communities and diverse partners in rural development spheres, participatory extension methodologies, and sustainable farming. At AGRA, he supports activities in 11 focal countries and is engaged in scaling the private sector-led extension approach and efforts on digitization of the village-based advisors, which is what he will be speaking with us about today. So Koresh, please, we look forward to hearing from you.
The Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, works across 11 countries in Africa and aims to impact 30 million farmers, 9 million directly by doubling their yields and incomes within 5 years. We aim to achieve this through supporting governments and other value chain players to enhance efficiency of extension systems with the objective of improving smallholder farmers' last mile access to inputs and information on good agronomic and post-harvest management practices, including markets. However, as some of you might be in the know, extension services in Africa are severely underperforming due to several constraints, key being insufficient numbers of government extension workers, outdated and non-localized extension content for the agents, limited participation of private sector companies in extension delivery services. All these lead to farmers not accessing up-to-date information and yield-enhancing technologies, thereby resulting in low yields and post-harvest losses. To mitigate these constraints, AGRA, together with its partners, initiated a private sector-led extension approach through the village-based advisor model. VBAs are self-employed, trusted community members who could be farmers or agripreneurs who offer last-mile delivery of information, extension services, including training, access to inputs, and output markets. VBAs differ slightly from the conventional community extension workers who mainly work as volunteers and not linked to private sector. Key achievements so far, together with our partners, we have identified and trained 33,000 VBAs in 9 countries, and these VBAs have in return directly reached and trained 5.5 million farmers in these countries, leading to behavior change by these farmers and higher adoption of technologies such as improved seeds, good agronomic practices, including climate smart practices. There's been significant crowding in by private sector in offering extension services, providing small packs of seeds and fertilizers for demos. There's reduced extension agent to farmer ratio. In most of these countries, the extension to farmer ratio is around 1 to 5,000 or 7,000 in other countries. But where we have intervened, this has gone down to 1 to about 500 farmers due to the presence of the VBAs. As mentioned earlier, VBAs are self-employed. Thus, to sustain their service provision, VBAs in most countries have started to engage in businesses. Some VBAs serve as agents of agro-dealers, agents of seed companies, agents of aggregators. They have also transitioned into becoming agro-dealers themselves or aggregators. In some instances, they've also become booking agents of mechanization providers like tractor, threshing services. They've even gone ahead and engaged in resilience technologies. For example, some of them have become nursery operators, tree nurseries, vegetable nurseries, and also engaging in poultry production, for example, day-old chicks. We are in the era of digital extension, and AGRA has partnered with digital solution providers to digitalize VBAs in order to enhance their effectiveness and sustainability. We believe digitalization will have impact on the work of VBAs by one, making sure VBAs access up-to-date localized content, for example, weather, pests, and disease alerts, and also accessing training content, for example, the animated video, and we use a lot the SOBO resources. VBAs enhance their linkages with diverse value chain actors, expanding their service portfolio to farmers and diversifying their incomes for sustainability. VBAs will have more interactions with farmers, especially now with these COVID-19 restrictions, because farmers now can just interact with the VBAs through the phones. Digitized records enhance ease of doing business. Currently, most of the VBAs rely on paperwork to carry out their transactions, and this can become very cumbersome when we are dealing with business partners. More importantly, also digitalization helps attract youth, both male and female, into agriculture, because most of the time youth complain about the drudgery nature of production. But if we have this expanded latitude for them to engage in different parts of the value chain, then they get attracted into agriculture. Of course, all this requires VBAs to have their capacity built in digital literacy. And we do this with our partners through practical hands-on training, including field work. As you can see, in the pictures there, these are VBS who have been trained and now taken out in the field to make sure they have experience. For example, geotagging farmers, georeferencing, collecting data, monitoring crop performance so that they have hands-on experience. We've partnered with several digital solution providers, but I'd just like to share a few today. One is Farmerline Ghana, where together we've profiled and digitized 2,250 VBAs and 254,000 farmers. Through this, farmers are able to access up-to-date good agronomic practices information, climate smart advice, financial literacy tips, and also provision of dashboard to facilitate aggregation of inputs of farmers by VBAs. The other partner that we've been working with in Kenya in 2 counties is Microsoft Kenya team, where we've developed what we call a AgriBot, which is a chatbot. And so far we've managed to profile 798 VBAs and 33,210 farmers. So once the VBAs have been trained, they go out, register farmers. This chatbot provides localized extension content, which is very critical, missing in many others, where farmers now can access information on seed varieties and blended fertilizers at location level. And if you look at the dashboard, you can see the farmers registered by VBAs are much more than the ones who are self-registered. And this points to the trust that farmers have in VBAs, because it's people they know and they interact very closely. If you look at the other dashboard, then it can also tell you about the frequency of the interaction between farmers and VBAs. The third partner that we've been working with, Digital Solutions, with the Smart Farm Plus, where we are working in 6 countries, targeting to onboard 10,626 VBAs, who will in turn profile and onboard around 2.6 million farmers. We started in March, and so far we've onboarded 5,600. Of course, quite some great progress has been noted. However, we still have more work to undertake and lots of learning to inform future investments. For example, with regards to the VBA model, one of the biggest challenges VBAs face is accessing credit or finance to expand their businesses. So one thing that we need to do now is get these VBAs into groups, get them into networks so that they can access such facilities. With regards to the digital space, we need to work towards bridging the digital divide on smartphones and digital literacy, especially on the part of women and youth. So we need to partner a lot with telcos to see how we can access such smartphones at affordable rates. Bundle of services provision as a business model is critical because VBAs have to be engaged throughout the season. So we believe through this digital work, VBAs will be able to access as many providers as possible and get various services, for example, insurance, mechanization at the same time. Then the other thing we need to work on again is financial transactions to have payments done online. Right now, payments are being done offline and there's not very good transparency. Then, as I said, we still have some learnings to do. So these are still our learning labs. For example, we'd like to know how digital solutions, female VBAs, reach more farmers. How does digitalization help VBAs expand their businesses? We're looking forward to sharing more on our experiences, and let's keep connected. Thank you so much for your attention.
Great, Koresh. Thank you so much for that presentation. So the last presentation we'll have today is from Musa Senge, who is the Deputy Partnerships Manager at One Acre Fund, Rwanda. I will, before I fully introduce Musa, I'll just encourage everyone again, if you have any questions, both for any of the presenters who have already spoken, and also for Musa as he's presenting, please do put them in the Q&A. As soon as his presentation is over, we'll move into the panel discussion. So that's your opportunity to make sure you get your questions in before Musa finishes. You can obviously get them in while we're talking as well, but if you want them queued up for the conversation, please get them in now. So with that, let me introduce you to Musa. He, as I said, he's a Deputy Partnership Manager at One Acre Fund. He has extensive experience with the agricultural extension system and currently coordinates extension resource mobilization and advocacy to implement the current homegrown agricultural extension system, Twigiri Muhinzi, throughout the country in Rwanda. He previously worked for the Rwanda Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources. So with that, let me turn it over to Musa, and we look forward to your presentation.
Hello, my name is Senge Musa. I work for One Acre Fund as a Deputy Partnership Manager for the Rwandan chapter. And today I'm going to talk about unlocking new pathways to sustainable growth through technology innovations. I'm going to start by providing a bit of background on One Acre Fund. So One Acre Fund is a non-profit social enterprise that supplies financing and training to help smallholders grow their way out of hunger and build lasting pathways to prosperity. Our vision as an organization is that when farmers improve their harvests, they pull themselves out of poverty. They also start producing surplus food for their neighbors. When farmers prosper, they eradicate poverty and hunger in their communities. One Acre Fund is growing quickly, and we are proud to soon represent Africa's largest network of smallholder farmers. Today, we are privileged to serve over 1 million farm families, with more than 5 million people living in those families. And the farmers we serve will produce enough surplus food to feed another 5 million of their neighbors. However, this is only the tip of the iceberg. When millions of farmers speak with one voice, we can more effectively pursue collaboration together with government and the private sectors to broaden our reach. One of the keys to generating impact is ensuring that our programs can reach farmers at scale. Before COVID-19, our field forces of 1,440 field officers served farmers through bi-weekly meetings in which an average of 22 farmers would congregate to receive training, farm supplies, or complete their payment. COVID-19 provided us with an opportunity to re-envision our internal farmer delivery services and the new direct farmer service platforms to ensure both farmers and staff safety while increasing our program's efficiency. As a response to COVID-19, we developed new technology innovations and accelerated the development of existing platforms and programs in our pipeline. For example, last year, we launched a full-scale USSD enrollment that registered 710,000 farmers and provided to all our field officers with tablets and smartphones used for training, key performance indicator monitoring, and direct farmer services. Additionally, we reopened our hotline to continue our farmer support services and phased out cash transactions by rolling out 100% mobile money integration. Digitization can transform the agriculture sector in the Eastern Africa and specifically in Rwanda. But we can only achieve massive gains through strong partnerships between the government and the private sector. Another example I can provide, for the last year, we adopted a new government electronic subsidy system called Smart Ngunganire System, or SNS, as enforced by the Rwanda Agriculture and Animal Resources Development Board, which is the implementing agency of the Rwandan Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources. to limit the use of paper during the pandemic. The Smart Ngunganire system is an electronic subsidy system that tracks the sale of subsidized inputs to farmers across the full value chain from importer to supply to farmer distribution. The application support application app called MOPA allows smartphone-based transaction at the agro-dealer level at the point of sale. We share the government of Rwanda's long-term vision of having a paperless seed and fertilizer subsidy control system that further optimizes efficiency in the sector. In another partnership with the Rwanda Agriculture and Animal Resources Development Board to support the implementation of the National Agriculture Extension Advisory Services, we provide training to the network of 14,200 farmer promoters. Farmer promoters basically lead farmers, and each village of Rwanda has one farmer promoter whose role is mainly to ensure that they train their fellow farmers on good agricultural practices, pest and disease management, and post-harvest techniques. Those are simple tools and simple techniques that smallholder farmers in Rwanda still need to acquire and still need to learn. So by training farmer promoters, we were able to actually send targeted short messages to them by reminding them what needs to be done throughout the season, which is another example of using technology to reach the mass. The other example I can provide is that we also use radio by providing information on improved seeds, fertilizers, and nutrition. Radio has allowed us to reach more than 80% of farmers, which is a win in terms of innovating ways of serving farmers we care about. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for that, Senge. So that wraps up our formal presentations. I'd invite all of the panelists to please come on camera. And we will jump into the Q&A. So the first question I want to ask, and this question goes to all the panelists, this goes out to all of you. What are the most pressing issues related to building a resilient and youth-inclusive food system in your community and on the continent? And how has your organization sought to address them? So if anyone would like to field that question, feel free to jump off mic or raise your hand if it's easier for us to do it that way, and I can pick you. Yes, Senge.
Thank you very much, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and the attendees. I think there is a need to be looking at the issues smallholder farmers facing in a holistic approach. It's not only about seed and fertilizers, unfortunately. It's also about how to use those inputs. It's also about the timeline you deliver those inputs, because most of the smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa and in other developing countries, it's that the agriculture is rain-fed. So the time you deliver seeds and fertilizers is crucial, just like the way you provide the right type of seed and fertilizers. It is also at the same pace of importance, just like the way you deliver training on how to use those inputs. So I still see that the main challenge for public and private sector is to ensure that the issues and challenges of smallholder farmers are taken into a holistic way. And I'm glad to confirm that One Acre Fund has been able to look into those areas, because the services that we provide as organizations are in terms of bundles. We know that providing seed on time, training, but also providing those inputs at the doorstep of the smallholder farmer will make sure that they are plant on time and they are able to put more food on their table. So that's what I can say for now, and I'm glad to provide any other feedback. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts on the most pressing issues related to building a resilient and youth inclusive food system in the communities that you work in? All right, I will take that as a no, and I'll move on to the next question. So the next question was wondering, so after COVID, attempts will be made to have live workshops again with group work and field experience. The question is whether after COVID, I missed the key, whether after COVID, do you think that attempts will be made to have live workshops with groups and field experience again? Or do you see, so I guess some of the things that have moved digital as a result of COVID staying there? And I'll add to this question, what do you think the implications are of that in both directions? So Alicia, I see your hand is up, and then I'll go to the CNFA team after that.
Great. Thank you, and thanks again for having us here. Digital Greens, really thankful to be on a panel with many of our partners and friends. Just to mention that I think already, even as COVID persists, we're seeing some return to in-person groups. It's often smaller groups, and we also are seeing sort of smaller kind of neighborhood. It was already village level, but even smaller groups, maybe of 6 to 10 people, especially in the after the first kind of wave of COVID kind of came and went. So we don't think that it ever actually went entirely away in many of these places. It paused and there was a lot more reticence, but then people started getting together in ways that they felt were safe. But supplementing it with digital technologies is sort of this powerful additional layer that was already happening, but is now accelerated. So I think the future that we are envisioning, or that we're seeing already happening in communities where we're working, is in-person being complemented with other channels of extension. And so we're kind of referring to it as multi-channel or omni-channel extension, meaning that you might be receiving your information through a community in-person delivered experience. And then that might be supplemented with a push message after the fact, reminding you of what you learned via WhatsApp, or an IVR message. Or you might go seek out something on YouTube to follow up on the information that you received. So I think this idea of the farmer being empowered to sort of seek out these different modalities, and also having some information pushed towards them along with in-person is what we're seeing emerge, sort of a combination of these tools together, which we've seen in some of our work as reinforcing, right? As with all learning, you hear it once, you hear it a second time, it helps with retention and action. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Alicia. Laurence, would you like to go next on that question?
Yeah, I want to say that after COVID, live workshop will be always organized, because both conventional and digitalized methods will prevail until the extension agent and farmers are trained and adopt those technologies. And it will depend on the performance of the technologies and access to the asset and the infrastructures. It is a cost, and there are social and economic aspects to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Etienne, did you have anything else you wanted to add onto that?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to add that even though we are in this critical period of COVID pandemic, we know that it is actually preventing gatherings of people. But the COVID pandemic period has taught us that technology actually can help us to reach people in agriculture extension and to transfer more information to farmers through digital means. For example, at Hingaweze, we provided the smartphone tablets to agriculture extension agents, to the community. And we think after even the COVID, they will still be using them to receive information from different organizations. Let's say even from One Acre Fund, from Rwanda, from the Ministry of Agriculture, from the Rwanda Agriculture Board, and they are using now them. They are using them, but we think after even COVID, they will still continue to use them, even though they are not actually replacing the actual meetings. The meeting can be held, but we can also increase the use of those technologies, of those digital means to actually strengthen more how we transfer information to farmers. So I believe that after COVID, we will be still having meetings of farmers training, physical trainings, but we can also increase the digital means actually to have more facilities that can transfer extension message to farmers, cutting also some cost involved in reaching out farmers or reaching out extension agents. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Etienne. And Suresh, we welcome you to weigh in on that question as well.
Thank you, Josh. I'd just like to add on to what my colleagues have said. For example, in Kenya, we saw the big use of the VBAs by government in terms of COVID response. For example, in Kiambu, the government wanted to distribute like 9 tons of maize and 5 tons of beans. And the extension system didn't have any capacity to do that. So quickly, the VBAs had all this information of the farmers they're working with, because a VBA works with around 250 farmers. So the government just took it to the area extension worker who phoned into the VBAs. The VBAs quickly came with their small motorcycles, picked that, and quickly sent alerts to their farmers that come prepared, come with your own pencil to sign, make sure you have a mask and all that kind of stuff. So quickly they did that. So Kiambu government, for example, has now incorporated that system into their strategy, and they're continuing, and it's scaled up to 14 counties in Kenya doing the same. So we've seen quite a big use of that. And interestingly, production levels didn't go so much down, but input delivery, market access, post-harvest were the ones which were really impacted upon.
Great, thank you, Courage. So the next question is about accessibility, affordability of internet. So it says, how does affordability of internet influence digital extension? And also adding to that, to what extent is rural connectivity a challenge and a limitation to ICT innovation? I know that I was recently looking at the price of 1 gigabyte of data across countries in Africa, and I don't remember the exact difference between the cheapest and the most expensive, but it was many, many times. It was something like, I don't know, 50 times, I think, was the price differential between cheapest and most expensive. So would welcome your thoughts on both the impact of affordability and then just the impact of accessibility of ICT infrastructure in these communities. Yes, Etienne. You're on mute, Etienne.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. I think when we talk about the digitalization of agriculture, extension of some other agriculture-related services, it also implies looking at the price of internet and internet connectivity, internet penetration in rural or remote areas. So in Rwanda, before I go to Rwandan context, it is really, internet is somewhat expensive in Africa, but there are some countries that are actually doing a great job in availing internet to the whole community and even in those very remote areas. For example, in Rwanda, the cost of internet for 1 gigabyte, I saw in the the question that someone who asked the question mentioned that the internet price for 1 gigabyte is between 2 to 4 USD. But I was checking in Rwanda, it's something below 2 USD, which is around 1.2 or 3 USD per gigabyte. I think the government is doing its best to actually avail the internet to the people. And we are actually having coverage of the four. We are having the coverage of internet about for above 90% coverage of the whole country, and the internet price is kindly is going somehow lower and lower as time goes on. So we think by deploying digital materials or digital extension services, it also implies the looking at how affordable internet is. We know there are some other technology, low-tech tools, like the use of feature phone, but the use of feature phone it has a limitation to what can the digital world offer. So that's why we opted most to go with the smartphone or tablets, because it offers a good range of what can be transferred through the internet or through the other digital technologies. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dean. So it sounds like Rwanda is in a better place, relative to other countries. And Koresh, from your experience working with UVAs across 11 countries, would welcome your thoughts on what sort of you're seeing in terms of differentials and how you're dealing with that across countries.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I think you've brought in a good point. It really varies. Definitely, we work in Rwanda and we see that big availability. Kenya also, but you come to other countries, for example, Mali, Burkina Faso, Mozambique. It's a big challenge. Huge prices, very small access, 10-20% ownership of smartphones, especially for women. So we've tried a lot to partner with private sector, the telcos. For example, in Kenya, Safaricom has this a system where you pay like 0.2 cents, okay, and then you get a smartphone and then pay slowly. Or, for example, the VBAs in Ghana recently were teamed up with EcoBank. They become agents of EcoBank. Then they are given a smartphone, they are given bundles, and then it's deducted from their commissions. So working into such with, and then the hardware itself, for example, charging systems. So one of our partners, for example, is Sun Culture, which now provides solar tools like chargers, which the VBAs become their agents, and they can also offer that as a service. So looking at these opportunities, especially leveraging on efforts of the telcos and other private sector partners who are already working with the VBAs really helps this.
Great, thank you. Lawrence, did you have remarks you want to make?
Yeah, you asked the question about the impact that can be generated from the adoption of digital extension tools. Yeah, I want to say that by extending the extension services to the value chain actors, I think if the technology works well and if there is access to those technologies, infrastructures, I think there may be a great impact in behavior change of the users, the farmers, and adoption. Therefore, we can see more productivity, we can see more incomes on the side of the farmers, but also welfare of the household members. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the next question is related to sort of replication. So the question is, how can some of the extension and advisory services activities described today be replicated in other countries. I know that Digital Green got its start in India, has expanded to Ethiopia and other countries in Africa. AGRA, is working across many countries. One Acre Fund started, if I recall correctly, in Kenya, and now has spread to some other countries in East Africa. So welcome anyone's thoughts, and of course CNFA works globally in this space as well. So Alicia, I see your hand is up. We'll go to you first.
Thanks. I would say Digital Green was really fortunate to have support for a project called Developing Local Extension Capacity, which USAID supported for many years, working with IFPRI and GFRAS. And that was a wonderful sort of community of practice for extension. And I say was, but the programs ended, but the community of practice goes on. So one thing I would suggest is for people who are interested in learning from others in the extension community is to join that community of practice, which they can find on the within the GFRAS website. There are different communities and they can join there. That would be the first thing, is to actually facilitate introductions between people who have similar challenges or looking for information that someone else might have. And then Digital Green has, as you mentioned, we've expanded from India to Ethiopia, but then we've also engaged in kind of packaging of our approach to do virtual trainings so that others can kind of replicate this. So we've replicated in many other places. And I think that's, we've been talking about extension to the farmer, but there's also extension of best practices to the extension system, which we can now use multimedia tools to deliver. So happy to talk more about that with anyone who's interested, but just wanted to point people in that direction. Oh, and sorry, and wanted to mention one of the questions asked if FarmStack's website was down. It's actually back up. So if anybody was trying to get onto FarmStack, please go check now. Thanks.
Etienne, see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to talk about this replication. We actually, in partnership with the CAB, with the Developing Local Extension Capacity project Alicia just mentioned, we customized the new extension learning kits. This is a kit developed by the Global Forum for Rural Advisory Services. It is a global document that can be actually applied in any context. So what we did in Rwanda, we took the kit, which is a kit of 16 modules, actually meant to train extension agents. They are available online, and we tried to customize them into Rwandan context for the kids actually to have the Rwandan context. If you are training an extension worker, he will just be trained in a local context of the module. So we conduct a customization of those modules into Rwandan context. I see this as something that can be replicated in other countries. They can just take that kit and try to incorporate into their extension system, because this is a very nice kit that actually helps to train extension workers professionally. Another thing is the application we developed with the CABI, which is a worldwide organization working also into capacity building of extension agents, also in research for integrated for the research into integrated soil and pest management, something like that, and that application is an application for training, for delivering training on the field. So the application, it has an administration dashboard where admin log in and see what is happening at the field. So what happened in the field is that the extension agent has a tablet or an Android device that actually has information, all the information prepared for him in one application. Those information are actually prepared by extension people who are actually preparing message for extension agents, which are maybe Hingawezi as, or Rwanda Agriculture Board, or the Ministry of Agriculture, or even the One Acre Fund. So those information are put into that application. Then the extension agent can download, also can provide a report of what he did. So that's something also that can be replicated also in other contexts. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tim. And Krish, I see that your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Just to address the same issue, first on the VBA model, as I said, this has been replicated in 9 countries and at the request mainly of private sector. Private sector has seen very important use because for the private sector to invest in a region where they've not been in or to enhance their investment, they need around 25 to 30% demand creation and awareness creation of their new technologies. In most of these countries, demand and awareness creation by VBAs has gone to around 70 to 80%. So private sector jumps at that opportunity because you're dealing with millions of farmers. So they've adapted that. Of course, private sector doesn't want heavy lifting. They want VBAs who are already organized into groups, into networks. So they just bring the small packs and they get orders into them. In terms of digital aspect, the VBAs work across with any tool that is available. We have VBAs who work with Digital Green. We have VBAs who are using a lot of the SOBO videos. In fact, right now we are getting into an MOU with SOBO, which is just to be signed. But what is critical is like what colleagues said, localized content, because most of it is generic. And simple things increase yields. For example, somebody will just say apply fertilizer. But if you do top dressing, you have to cover that. Okay, so a simple technique like just a video showing how to cover that fertilizer pushes yields up to 30%, all that kind of stuff. So it's really important to have this localization of these digital tools for the apps.
Great, thank you so much, Krish. So the next question I want to ask, and I'll pose it to everyone, is how can we ensure sustainability of these information systems in the long run? So if you can each talk to your models for ensuring sustainability of your work, we'd appreciate it. Well, Etienne, you're off mute, so shall I hand it to you first?
Yeah, sure. I think because what we do in agriculture extension system most of the time is about ensuring what will happen after the project ends. Because Hingaweze is a project of 5 years and we are now into our last year. And we kind of ensure that what we do in the community will have an impact even after we left the place. So we are working with other organizations, including the Rwanda Agriculture Board, which is a permanent organization for implementation of all activities in agriculture in Rwanda. We are working with the Ministry of Agriculture. But more specifically for the purpose of sustainability, we are working with the private sector. We know that private sector, they work for the interests, but nowadays they are actually broadening their scope of work, and they are also going into the aspect of social enterprise. So they are actually working for the community to make their impact, to make their profit, and also make impact in the community. So Hingaweze is supporting the private sector to actually be capacitated to continue Hingaweze intervention into the community. Like, for example, we are working with the digital digital companies in Rwanda to help in capacity, to build their capacity for them to deliver the extension services to the farmers through digital means. So we provided a grant to the private sector to actually capacitate to increase their capacity into delivering extension services to farmers even after Hingaweze phases out. We are also trying to capacitate youth and bring them into a private extension for them to have that capacity to generate income for their well-being, for their employment, for their businesses, and then for them to help also the community. So we are kind of helping the community through private sector engagement. So that's actually mainly what we are doing into the community. And I also mentioned that we provided some digital some digital tools, tablets to the community, to the farmers cooperatives, for them to have that constant information, that constant connection with the other worlds, for them to access information wherever they are, even after Hingaweza is no longer there. So that's actually what we are offering to the community for the matter of sustainability. Thank you.
Great, thanks you too. Krish, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Josh. I think that's a critical issue. In fact, even we have a policy team and are really looking at these issues because our policy team connects a lot with governments. And one of the issues is, can governments also in one way regard digital extension as part of the public good? Okay, because most of the time there's been this challenge that if it's just information alone, farmers are not willing to pay for that unless it's a bundle of services. You know, like there's information, but tied into, for example, crop insurance and all that. So how does that happen? What tax incentives can happen to these companies? So that's one angle. The second angle, for example, like with the crop in technology, you see, the driver there is having lots of private sector onboarded onto that platform, such that VBAs can latch onto those opportunities because VBAs are self-employed. So the more partners they engage in, the higher chances of them sustaining this digital solution. I gave the example like of EcoBank or maybe Hello Tractor. So the VBAs are agents of Hello Tractor. So the cost of them buying the bundles, buying new smartphones, come from the profits they make because they're trained in the digital literacy that the powerful smartphone you have, of course, we have to check so that it doesn't increase the digital divide, the better for your services. The more you make records more digital, the better, because imagine if a VBA has to send a list of maybe 50,000 to an agro-dealer handwritten. It's a nightmare for the agro-dealer. But if using that dashboard, like what we saw in Farmerline or in Cropline, amalgamate that and send it quickly, then it becomes much easier. So for us, two angles, government, but more importantly, the private sector working on this by provision of those bundle of services.
Great, thanks, Krish. Laurence, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I want to highlight what Etienne said. Yes, it will be a partnership. No one single organization can pretend to achieve a strong and well-established digitalization of the agriculture extension. Yes, partnership, investment, joining efforts from both public and private sector, working technically on the tools, working on the access of digital tools, and but also working on the policies. The environmental system shall be friendly. That's what I want to add. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Alicia, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think agree with everything everyone's already said. Just maybe two more things. One is that I think a key to Digital Green's work has been working through existing social networks. So whatever groups already exist on the ground, using that as the sort of people infrastructure to deliver messages is important to that long-term sustainability, and working through existing public sector investments as well as working with private sector. So that's one piece I wanted to mention. The second is just more forward-looking. As I mentioned in FarmStack, we see as time goes on that farmers are accessing many more channels. As cost of internet comes down, that's going to become more common. But that proliferation is creating interoperability challenges, and it's creating challenges for the farmer to sort of sift through the types of information that they get. So protocols like FarmStack, which are trying to enable sort of faster exchange and collaboration across actors, and the farmer's ability to sort of control who has their data, I think is going to be long-term a key to sustainability as well, and limiting the confusion that could come as these systems continue to proliferate if they're not synced up.
Great, thanks, Alicia. So I'm going to try and sneak in a little bit of amount of time left, 2 questions. Let's see if we can do it. I also flag that there were a couple of questions that were asked specifically to Agra and Digital Green. Those have been answered by Alicia and Koresh respectively in the Q&A. So if you're curious to those answers, if you open the Q&A and go click on the answered tab, you can find those questions and you can read Alicia and Koresh's response to those questions. So with that, the first question that I want to get in is, to what extent have each of you engaged private sector entities as partners in the delivery and dissemination of extension services? And then could community videos and or adoption of VBAs be opportunities for selected input companies to expand their extension support to farmers? So we welcome anyone's thoughts on either of those 2 parts of the question. Yes, Koresh.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I think I attempted a bit on that, especially with the private sector, with the VBAs. As I said, in all the countries that we work with, the movers of the VBA approach are private sector. Currently, it varies, but in most countries, VBAs who are engaged in business right now are between 30 to 40% of the VBAs who have been trained. And we are seeing mostly going into input supplies and aggregation. Mechanization is still very low, so we are pushing onto that. But we see diversification of services being provided key. So private sector, as I said, they don't want to run their own VBA model, because then there are issues of like exclusivity. Because if you find, for example, company A trains the VBAs on their own, recruits and all that, then they would like to keep them as exclusive to their products. But for example, right now, when the VBAs have already been recruited, trained on the basic good agronomic practices, then a company like Seedco can say, okay, we have a new product on vegetable seed. Can you bring your VBAs to be trained on this? And then they are trained. If they want to become part of their distribution system, well and good, but they don't own them. So that's critical, just to make sure there's no exclusivity with regards to the VBAs. And more importantly, we work very closely with the government, because it shouldn't exist as a dependent kind of extension system. So in all our countries, these VBAs are supervised. Actually, the identification and training of these VBAs is done by country extension staff, and they bring in the extension agents. So it's very critical that they become part and parcel of this, to avoid this projectization, project kind of mode of doing things and mainstreaming them into government systems.
Great, thanks, Chris. And Alicia, has Digital Green done any work in terms of working with private sector actors like input companies to disseminate community-based videos, or do you have any thoughts on the broader question?
I mean, some of we primarily work through the public sector. It's not to say that we haven't collaborated with private sector to essentially replicate the video extension, the community video model. And we see that as a wonderful opportunity going forward. But I think one of the things that I would just kind of go back to, which I probably sound like a broken record, is that we're increasingly interested in figuring out how to make sure that the different channels that are accessible to farmers are using the best possible data, and that farmers' data is protected in that system, so that they know if they're working with let's say they're working with a private sector entity and they're giving information about their farm and their practices, they actually know how that's being used and have potential to benefit. So we have had those collaborations. We're always interested in them, but I think we're also starting to look forward a little bit to how do we make that work better for the farmer and for the private sector in the future too.
Great, thanks. So the last question I want to try and sneak in the couple minutes we have left is, the person wrote, interested in hearing how you're connecting to the market making part of the equation. So producing more and better advice is helpful, but can fall flat if the goods can't or don't get sold. Can you talk about how traditional extension can be expanded to help with improving sales. Are there models that you are seeing working more than others? And we have now 90 seconds to wrap it up. So if anyone wants to, in 30, 45 seconds, give any thoughts on this, we very much welcome it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I might say that we had actually a partnership with a private entity that provide extension services to farmers through digital tools, and Hingaweze has partnered with that private entity actually and gave a kind of a grant to that private entity for them to have that capacity of providing digital extension to farmers. But most importantly, that private entity helps farmers to reach the market. So it has a platform, and then that platform, he wrote actually every information of the cooperative is working with, actually to have those cooperatives listed on his on that platform that actually is expose them to the larger market. So it is a digital platform, and it is now being explored, and it is actually helping Hingaweze Hingaweze beneficiaries into accessing the market. Thank you.
Thanks. Koresh, in 30 seconds or so, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we work with the off-takers, and VBAs also have been linked to these off-takers. They are agents of aggregators, and all our grantees have these market access platforms, giving prices, trends, and all that. So that's critical. So the VBAs have been trained on that and pass that information to farmers through the off-taker services.
Great. Lawrence, 10 seconds. If you can sneak in.
I want to say that that platform that Etienne is mentioning is connecting. It is trying to connect farmers with the buyers, and it is well working. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Lawrence. So with that, unfortunately, we have to conclude the Q&A. I know there were a few questions that we didn't get to. I apologize. This was a really great discussion, and I appreciate all of the questions that came in. I appreciate all of your responses to that. So as we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to make sure that everyone's aware of the next session, which is going to be held on September 14th. That's on building smallholder resilience through ICT. It's also at 9 a.m. Eastern time, so the same time as today. And it will be moderated by Dr. Michael Carter at the University of California, Davis. So you can register using through the same website that you use to register for this event. And again, want to thank everyone for your participation. I hope that, I see that the presenters have put a number of resources in the chat. So hopefully people get a chance to check those out, and encourage you to reach out, engage with the panelists for any follow-up that you may have. And with that, I think that's a wrap. So thank you so much, everyone.